Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight, you wake up in the wrong century. There's something wet beneath your head. You don't dare lift it. In tonight's descent, we follow a story buried under centuries of silence, a tale that should have been forgotten but wasn't. If you value the truth and don't mind a little discomfort, subscribe. But don't say you weren't warned. The lights, leave them on if you want. It won't help. Let's begin. Ashes, you wake with a buzz in your ears and the taste of iron in your mouth. Your eyes open to a sky the color of spoiled milk. You lie in the middle of what used to be a road, though it's hard to tell now. Mud swallows your elbows. Something soft and rotten is beneath your cheek. It's not a blanket. You don't move. You learned that already. Movement attracts dogs and men, and worse. You're 15, or 17, or 12. You stopped counting when your last brother stopped breathing. That was 2 winters ago, or maybe 3. Your mother once called you Little Dragon. Her face is gone now, even in dreams. The wind tugs at your ribs like it's trying to hollow you out. You roll over and you hear something snap. It isn't yours. A hand blackened with the skin peeling like boiled fruit had been under your spine. It belonged to the man beside you, half sunk in the muck, jaw torn open, as if he screamed too long and too hard. No one listened. The villagers fled weeks ago. Mongol patrols passed through, and disease followed like a loyal dog. Now you are the only one left who still breathes in this parish of decay. You think about screaming, but there's no one to hear you. So instead, you crawl. Your belly scrapes across broken pottery. Your knees leave trails in the ash. The fields are bare, the locusts saw to that. You pass the remains of a pig nailed to a tree with a prayer stuffed in its mouth. The gods didn't answer. The monks from the nearby temple used to chant morning sutras. Now their silence is heavier than the bells ever were. You reach the temple gate and fall against it. The wood is splintered, burned. Someone opens it. He wears the robes of a lesser monk, though they hang off him like wet rags. His eyes are bloodshot, not from weeping, from smoke. He looks at you. You look back. Neither of you flinch at the other's stench. Inside, he rasps. You crawl past a shrine where flies feast on a fruit offering writhing with maggots. They give you broth. Not meat, not rice. You don't ask what's in it. You drink it anyway. You sleep. Then you wake to chanting. They dress you in the same faded robes. Your lice find new homes. Here they offer salvation. But salvation has a price. You sweep blood from the stone floor, scrub soot from the statues, bow to a god who never speaks, never blinks, never weeps. You're not allowed to speak for a month. Not that you remember how, but you watch. Oh, how you watch. You watch the abbot whip the barefoot novices for stealing rice he himself hides under his mattress. You watch a dying brother claw his own eyes out during a fever dream. You watch rats nibble the pages of sacred texts and no one stops them. The gods are quiet, but the monks are not. They whisper in the dark about hunger, about rebellion, about heaven's will. You pretend not to hear, because you've learned the first one who hears is always the first one to disappear. One morning, you wake to find Brother Yuan missing. His mat still warm, his bowl untouched. No one says anything. The next night, the abbot is found hanging from his prayer beads. They say he ascended, but you saw the bruises on his throat. There is one book you're allowed to read. You read it obsessively, not for its wisdom, but because it's the only thing no one has torn apart yet. Its pages reek of mildew and old tears. You don't believe a word of it, but you pretend. It keeps you alive. A visitor comes one day, not a monk, not a beggar. He wears rags, but his voice is steel. He brings news. The empire is fracturing. The Mongols grow weak. The South rises in rebellion. The people cry for justice. The temple gives him shelter. He gives them promises. You give him something else, your name. You don't know why. Maybe because he didn't flinch when he saw you. Maybe because you were tired of whispering prayers to stone. Maybe because you were ready. He laughs. Even beggars can wear armor, he says. That night, you sit by the fire. You burn your robe. The flame smells like old blood. You watch it curl and vanish. The monks chant, but not for you. You're done praying. You're done begging. And you're not cold anymore. Just hungry. Hunger is a better teacher than God. That's what he tells you, the man in rags with steel for a voice. The one who didn't ask who you were before he fed you. His name is hidden. You call him Brother Fang like the others do, though he smiles when he hears it. A smile that shows too many teeth. He leads you out of the temple, down from the hills, away from the silence and the incense and the rotting idols. The others follow a trickle of shaved heads and hollow stomachs. They don't march, they slink. You enter a village where even the dogs won't bark. It's been emptied out by conscription or plague or taxes. It doesn't matter anymore. Fang tells you to take what's left. You hesitate. He notices. You prayed long enough, he says, without turning his head. Time to eat. You eat. You eat the roots beneath a dead man's field. You drink from the well with the bloated body still bobbing in it. You gnaw salted leather from abandoned shoes. And when that's not enough, you steal. It's easier than it should be. The old woman you rob tries to spit at you, but her mouth is too dry. She watches you run with her last grain sack. You don't look back. You feel shame for 2 days. Then shame stops coming. That's the real hunger, the one that hollows out the space where your conscience used to sit. Fang watches all of this without speaking. Then one night, he finally says, "Now you're learning." You ask what this is, this thing he's making you into. He tells you a tool. Tools change the world, but only if they're sharp. The next lesson comes with blood. The red turbans are waiting. They're not soldiers, not yet. They're farmers with sickles, but they don't talk about crops. They talk about heaven. The Mongols, they say, have lost the mandate. Heaven is angry. Heaven apparently looks a lot like you, barefoot, starved and shaking. You are taught new words. You do not know how to read them, but you memorize them all the same. Typing, purity, renewal, fire. They stitch red cloth around your arm. It itches. You meet your first real commander the next day, a former butcher turned general. He teaches you how to sharpen bamboo into spears. You do not know his name. He forgets yours instantly. You are a weapon now. You are told that if you die in battle, your soul will ascend through the smoke. You think of your little brother coughing up pieces of himself buried in a hole you had to dig with your hands. You wonder where his soul went. Probably somewhere quieter than this. Fang tells you the rebels will take the empire city by city. He lies. What they actually take are oxen, women, and teeth. You march on a river village next. It surrenders without a fight. And still someone burns it anyway. You see a toddler with melted skin crawling toward a mother who isn't moving. You step over them both. Your stomach doesn't turn. Not this time. That night they give you rice, hot, clean, real. You eat it all, every grain. You do not sleep, because now you understand. This is what it costs to eat like a human again. You ask Fang why you had to kill them. He says because they wouldn't have fought beside us. That's reason enough. You nod. You do not agree, but your hunger does. You are baptized again, not in water, but in smoke. You start carrying a blade. You name it sister, though you never tell anyone, because if you ever had a sister, you can't remember her name. The next weeks are filled with ash. You burn towns that had already burned themselves. You slice men open who are already half dead. Once you find a soldier, no older than 12, sobbing behind a shed. You look into his eyes. He pleads. You wonder what your own eyes looked like when you still believed in mercy. You close his throat with one motion. You do not pray. That night you are promoted. Fang claps you on the back and tells you you're going to be someone. You feel nothing, except hungrier. A lesser-known fact buried in rotting records, at least one red turban unit. Yours traded women for crossbows. It worked. You win the next battle because of it. You lie awake that night listening to the sobs from the prisoner's tent. You press your fingers to your ears, but the sound comes from inside. The monks used to say karma returns in the next life. You wonder what happens if you never plan to die. You sleep with your boots on. Your commander dies in his sleep poisoned, they whisper. Fang says nothing, but he starts riding a better horse. You're assigned a new duty recruitment. You go back to villages that once spat on beggars. Now they welcome you with shaking hands. They don't know you used to sleep in their ditches. You don't remind them. You smile. You bow. And when they hesitate to give their sons to your cause, you burn just one house. The rest fall in line. You are learning that fire is better than sermons, fear faster than faith. The peasants call you Jew. It means pillar. You let them call you that, because it's better than what you were before. A name without a home, a body without a god, a hunger without a stomach. And as long as they believe in Jew, they'll never see the beggar. Not until it's too late. You wake with a monk's robe stuck to your skin like damp parchment. It's not yours anymore, but you haven't thrown it away. Not yet. You keep it folded at the bottom of your travel sack, with the brittle bones of old rice grain still clinging to the sleeves. It smells like mildew and regret. Someday you'll burn it, but not today, because deep down you suspect it still knows your name, and it waits for the right night to whisper it back. You march, always marching, from famine into fire, from fire into frost. The road bleeds under your sandals. Sometimes you see your reflection in water, but the face looking back doesn't blink in sync. You don't trust it, and it doesn't trust you. There's a monastery on the ridge ahead, old forgotten, half collapsed like a skull caved in from the top. You arrive at dusk with 20 men and a banner of bloodied silk. It smells of smoke and prayer. Inside there are monks, thin, wrinkled, eyes like damp ash. You expect them to resist. They don't. They bow. They offer tea. They smile with mouths that no longer grow teeth. You realize halfway through the meal that they are waiting to die. They've seen this play before. You try to feel pity, but there is none left. Just curiosity. So you ask the eldest monk, "Where is your God now?" He doesn't blink. He says same place he always was, watching to see what you do. The silence that follows is heavier than iron. Later that night your men loot the temple. You take nothing, except the abbot's prayer beads. You hang them from your belt just beside your sword. You don't pray, but sometimes you touch them, to remind yourself that you once feared something, and that you miss it. The next morning you find the eldest monk dead in the lotus position. No mark on him, no wound, no struggle. He just stopped. Your second in command calls it devotion. You call it convenience. He died before he had to see what comes next. Your men burn the monastery. It collapses inward like a dying breath. The ashes float for days. You keep marching. You're no longer a tool. You're a symbol now. Recruits whisper your name with reverence or fear. Your face is smeared across painted scrolls, always in red, always too handsome, too holy. You don't recognize it. That's how you know it's working. A chill fact, historians later found over 32 different names used for you in rebel correspondence. Savior, Butcher, Monk General, Phoenix King, Heavenly Fang. You answer to all of them, because they all taste better than Beggar. You reach a city strangled by drought and bandits. Its gates are sealed with rusted iron. Inside, the officials hoard grain while corpses dry like fish on rooftops. You lay siege for 8 days. No food, no surrenders. Then the miracle happens. They let you in, but not because they believe you, because they fear what's behind you more. 1,000 starving men at your back. You enter the city like a shadow with legs. Your blade doesn't leave its scabbard, but your eyes do all the cutting. The mayor offers you a banquet. You attend, you eat, and then just before dessert you have the mayor strangled with silk. The banquet continues. Your men don't ask why, but the city does. You answer with grain. Food appears. Roads reopen. Markets buzz again. You become a myth with manners. A butcher who feeds. And it works. They love you and fear you. The perfect combination. Weeks pass. You oversee executions. You officiate weddings. You sign proclamations with ink made from ox blood. And at night, you write letters to no one. You still can't read, but the motions comfort you. Your sleep is not restful, because when your eyes close, the monastery burns again. The monk's corpse smiles. Your brother coughs blood in your ear. And always, always that little child in the village skin bubbling like wax crawls toward you on stumps. You wake choking. You whisper a prayer you no longer believe. And the prayer answers, you're still here. A lesser known truth in a village near Lake Tai during this campaign. You ordered the execution of an entire militia that surrendered peacefully. Why one of them reminded you of yourself. You couldn't have that. The body count grows. So does your army. And now you are given a title. Commander of the Left Path. Which is funny, because you don't remember turning left. But you smile, accept it, and have the messenger who brought the news beaten for arriving late. Your lieutenants say you're becoming harsh. You say so is history. Then you write your name poorly crookedly on a map soaked in pig blood. The map marks your next target, an outpost loyal to the Yuan. But you already know how that story ends. You've seen it too many times. Starve them, surround them, offer mercy, burn them anyway. You used to wonder if they felt anything at all. Now you don't bother wondering, because you're not the one inside the flames. Yet. Ash drifts down like snow, not the clean kind. The kind that sticks in your throat, clogs your eyes, settles into your scalp and whispers, "This is what victory tastes like. You've come far." And yet something rots beneath your feet. The rebellion spreads like an infection through the Empire's bones. UN officials flee cities under cover of night. Garrisons melt into the hills. Whole provinces become wild teeth biting at the hands that once fed them. And through it all, your army grows. Not with soldiers, with believers. They chant your name Zhu, but they do not know you. If they saw what your dreams looked like, they would run. The Red Turban movement has become a god with 100 heads each, snarling in a different direction. Fang is no longer beside you. He has his own banner now, soaked in more blood than yours. Your paths cross only when the bodies pile too high. He still smiles. You do not. You've learned smiling is a luxury for those who aren't afraid of mirrors. You enter a city near the Yangtze. It smells of rot and perfume. The officials have already fled, but the tax records remain. You read none of them. Instead, you order the scribes executed for cooperating. Your scribe protests, says they were only doing their jobs. You agree. Then you burn him too. I'm not punishing them, you say coldly. I'm punishing the habit. Your men nod. One retches in the corner. You promote him the next day. He fears you now. Good. Your headquarters is a borrowed estate crawling with lizards and old wine stains. The tiles leak. The walls moan. You sleep in the master's bed. His blood still dampens the pillow. You do not change it. Why should you? You earn this rot. The whispers begin soon after. That you are growing ambitious. That you take cities without asking. That you kill too freely, even for a red turban. You hear them all. You do not respond. You sharpen your sword and your memory. There is one man, Chen Yuliang, who watches you too closely. He writes reports, sends them north, claims to be protecting the movement from corruption. You smile at him in meetings, compliment his strategies, offer him tea. Then one night you intercept his courier. The letter bears your name and a list, a long one, executions, bribes, fires, torture, conscription of children, all true, all yours. You rewrite the letter, add one final line, and now I die with regret for my betrayal. Then you hang the courier, burn the original, and deliver the edited version yourself. Chen Yuliang weeps at the funeral. You shake his hand. His days are numbered now, but not yet. No, you're saving him. Because there's a special kind of hunger reserved for traitors. And you want him to feel it grow. The empire notices you now. The Yuan emperor sends word, an offer of pardon. Land, a title, peace. You laugh. A soft, hoarse thing like wind through a burial shroud. Peace, you buried that in a temple long ago. You send back a single reply. A monk's robe, torn, burned, stained with your own blood. You do not include a letter. You want them to guess. They do. The next month, 3 imperial cities fall without resistance. You enter the third alone, wearing red silk and boots caked in ash. The people line the streets. They throw petals. You feel none of it, because you are busy watching the rooftops. Always the rooftops. You take no wife. You take no rest. Only territory and ghosts. They follow you like dogs. You see them in puddles, in torchlight, in the eyes of crying mothers. You never speak to them, but sometimes when no one is near you, nod, to acknowledge that yes, you remember. You always will. A disturbing fact left out of most dynastic records: in a town near Hangzhou, you ordered the mass drowning of an entire garrison after they had surrendered. Why? Because their commander laughed. It reminded you of your father, or at least the man who called himself that before his lungs turned to liquid. The laughter followed you for days, bubbling up in streams and basins echoing from drowned mouths. Eventually, you drowned it with wine, then swore off drinking. You've kept that promise, mostly. But wine isn't the only thing that makes you forget. Power helps too. You start dressing like an official. Not quite an emperor, not yet, but the hem of your robes kisses silk now. Your men begin bowing lower, and your enemies die quicker. Even Fang, who once called you little brother, keeps his distance. He sees it, what you're becoming. Maybe he always did. You wonder, did he pull you from the temple that night? Or did he just point to the darkest path and watch you walk it, it doesn't matter now, because the path is yours, and ahead lies a capital that still dares to kneel to Mongols. Not for long. Let them pray. Let them build their walls. Let them call you monster. You've worn worse names. Beggar, heretic, blasphemer. Now they will call you something new. They will call you emperor. And then they'll forget what you were. Won't they? You learn to kill between bites of rice. The bowl never leaves your hand. The blade never leaves your hip. You eat beside corpses. You sleep beside boiling oil. You speak in orders, not sentences. It's been years since you begged, but the hunger never left. It just changed clothes. Now it wears a crown made of ambition. Your army is no longer a mob of barefoot monks and half-starved peasants. It's a machine, and you are its teeth. Your name has weight now. You hear it in the stammer of governors, in the squeal of merchants who bow too low. You can read now, poorly, but you still write like a butcher, lines thick with pressure, always red, always final. A messenger arrives one dawn drenched in sweat, too afraid to dismount. He carries news a red turban cell in the east has declared their own emperor. You do not ask who, you know who. Chen Yuliang, the man who once wept at a funeral you arranged, the man who counted your sins on paper, then tried to outgrow your shadow. You smile, for the first time in weeks, not because you're happy, but because now you don't have to pretend anymore. Now you get to make an example. Your generals suggest negotiation, unity. They still believe in words. You believe in fire. So you prepare, not for a war, for a cleansing. Your troops call it a campaign. You call it a meal. And Chen Chen is dessert. You march through territory that once called you savior. Villages that cheered your banners now whisper your name with cracked lips and wary eyes. You see the fear, and you let it grow, because fear is faster than food, and you are still so hungry. The campaign begins with salt. You poison their wells. You scorch their earth. You cut down trees for no reason but to hear the sound. A city refuses to open its gates. You starve it. Then you open the gates yourself, not with words, not with ladders, but with bodies. You stack them. You burn the rest. A boy runs from the flames screaming. One of your men raises his sword. You stop him, not out of mercy, but because the boy looked too much like your brother. For just a second, that night you don't sleep. The boy didn't remind you of your brother because of his face, but because of his scream. It sounded right. The generals begin to murmur. Some wonder aloud if the war is personal now. You don't answer, because it isn't. It's surgical. History will not remember nuance. It will remember the last man standing. You intend to be that man. A recorded fact, the siege of Luoxing Tower ends when you launch decapitated horses over the wall using stolen catapults. It works. The defenders kill themselves before you arrive. You walk through the gates ankle deep in rot and eat a bowl of rice on the roof. Your men do not speak. You promote 5 of them. You behead 2. Discipline. You tell them it's necessary. But the truth, you couldn't remember their names, and that made you angry. Chen retreats to Wuchang. He fortifies it with everything he has: walls, ships, a river clogged with stakes and oil. You gather your fleet, not because you need it, but because he does, and you want to burn what he loves first. The river war is short. You bait him out, you drown his men, and then you catch him, not in battle, but in the mud, on his knees, with a sword he no longer knows how to hold. He tries to speak. You silence him with a single strike, not across the neck, across the mouth. You watch him bleed from the thing he used most, his voice. Then you order his body burned. No tomb, no shrine, no record. You erase him, and with him, a version of yourself that might have existed, the cautious one, the one who forgave, the one who cared. He's gone now, burned with the rest. You return to the capital, your robes heavier, your smile tighter, your eyes no longer blink when children scream. Fang sends you a letter, short, just 2 words, almost there. You don't reply. You don't need to, because soon there will be no there. Only you. A chilling truth buried under imperial silence during the campaign against Chen. Your soldiers were ordered not only to execute prisoners, but to cook them in front of their comrades. Not as sustenance, as message. You didn't attend those executions, but you knew, and you didn't stop them. You rationalized it. The empire rotted long before I arrived. But that's the lie you tell to others. To yourself you say, they should have known better than to trust me. And you believe it. Because it's true. Every lesson you learned hungry. Now you feast. And there is no such thing as enough. The masks of the red turbans crack under your breath. You were never meant to see behind them. They were meant to be ideal salvation stitched in silk, righteousness written in blood. But you've lived inside the fold too long. You know the threads are rotting. You know the faces beneath. And they look just like yours. Tired, hungry, terrified. Fang returns. He arrives like a rumor, silent steps, warm, smile eyes, empty as bone. He finds you in a burned-out palace pacing its jade-tiled corridors like a ghost who never left. He offers wine. You accept, though you no longer drink. You want to see if your hands still remember how to tremble. They don't. You sit across from him in the hollow wreckage of a former governor's banquet hall. The pillars are scorched, the ceiling blackened by old rebellions. It smells like mildew and betrayal. Fang pours for both of you. You don't speak, not yet, because the air between you still carries the ashes of shared sin. Finally, he says, we've done it. You raise an eyebrow. He clarifies, the empire has no spine left. The Yuan bleed from every limb. All we need now is a head to wear the crown. You don't reply. You both know who he means, but he doesn't say it. Not directly. That's how men like him work. They ask with silence. They demand with smiles. He sips his wine, then adds, the others are watching. They wonder who it'll be. You nod. Let them wonder, because you already know. There are only 2 left who can lead this broken crusade, and one of them has already stood too close to your fire. Fang leans forward. Unity Zhu. We take the capital together, split the titles, divide the heavens, like brothers. You meet his gaze, and for the first time since you burned Chen, you feel something stir. Not hope, not rage, pity. Fang still believes this is about heaven. You know better. You reach for your cup, swirl the dregs of his wine. It smells faintly of almonds. Poison, not much, just a trace. Enough to test you, to see if you'd notice. You smile. It hurts your face. Fang doesn't drink the rest of his. He doesn't have to. The conversation is done. The next morning he's gone. His camp still smolders. A quiet message. One final bluff. The stage is set now. You just have to finish the story. But first you must decide what kind of ending it will be. Your advisors, those few who dare urge diplomacy, they tell you that Fang's forces outnumber yours, that he commands loyalty, respect, even awe. You say nothing. You send scouts. You send spies. You send whispers. And those whispers bloom like fungus in Fang's ranks. Men begin to desert. Others begin to wonder. Some begin to dream. You make sure they dream of you. It's not difficult. You are after all the one who never loses, never apologizes, never begs. You issue new proclamations, divine ones. You say that the mandate of heaven has passed, from the Mongols, from the eunuchs, from the old gods, to you. No one dares to correct the record, because you've already rewritten it, in flame, in silence, in heads mounted along the road. A chilling fact buried in court records before your declaration of divine right. You ordered 63 red turban leaders executed for corruption of heavenly vision. What this meant was never defined, because it didn't need to be. They were Fang's men. You burned their tongues before you burned their bodies. No last words, no sermons, just ash. You send one final letter to Fang. 6 characters. Heaven does not share power. He does not reply. He prepares. The civil war begins with drums carved from rebel skin. His army meets yours in a valley scarred by old rice fields and new graves. You march in silence. No banners, no colors, just you in red. The battle is short, because battles are always short when the conclusion is already written. You ordered one of Fang's commanders bought 3 weeks ago. He switches sides at dawn. By dusk, Fang is alone. He fights well. You let him, out of respect, out of cruelty. When he finally falls, you don't kill him. You watch as others do. They cut his throat too slowly. You do not blink. You do not look away. Only when his eyes close, finally do you speak. Brothers die with their mouths shut. The survivors bow. The valley is renamed. Your historians will call it the purification. You call it Tuesday. In the days that follow, the last of the red turbans are absorbed or erased. Their banners become firewood. Their ideals become compost. Their memories become crimes. And you become something worse than a rebel. You become the last man standing. And with that, the only one worth remembering. They offer you a crown. You do not touch it. Not yet. Because there is still a small stain at the edge of your sleeve. Old blood. From a monk. Or maybe a child. You've forgotten. But it hasn't. The robe waits, folded, watching. Every empire rots from the inside. The outer walls may glitter with gold, but inside the foundation swarms with termites, betrayal, excess, decay. You've studied them long enough to recognize the signs. Not in books, in bodies. You stand at the edge of a ravaged prefecture watching your soldiers pile corpses into neat rows. They died before you arrived. Or maybe they didn't. It's hard to tell anymore. The line between victim and witness has blurred beyond recognition. The Mongols still call themselves rulers, but their grip is loose, slick with the blood of forgotten villages and overtaxed farmers. Their edicts rot in the sun, ignored or misunderstood, translated through too many tongues and too few hands that care. You ride through a burned city with no name. A mother drags a cart of bones through the mud. No one stops her. No one helps. You see your own reflection in her empty stare, or perhaps you just hope to. The Yuan dynasty is dying, but it doesn't know how to die. It thrashes, screams, clings, and like any dying beast it lashes out. A verified fact carved into imperial records, now buried. In the final decade of Mongol rule, over 85 separate peasant revolts ignited across China. Each one crushed more savagely than the last, even as the treasury emptied. They were desperate. They started taxing shadows, charging families for dead sons, imposing levies on wind-blown roofs and barren rice fields. You knew this moment would come. You waited for it. Like a spider waits for a fly to exhaust itself. Your army no longer rebels, but something. Heavier marches toward the capital's pulse, not to seize it yet, not while the corpse still twitches. You aim lower first. Like all good infections, you start at the foot. Provinces fall, prefects bow. Warlords swear loyalty or vanish. Your maps bleed red, but inside your camps rot grows too. Your men, once starving monks and vengeful peasants, now sit fat on spoils. They joke about gutting tax collectors with silver forks. They breed greed like lice. You try to stamp it out. You fail. A general executes 10 looters. 3 days later, someone robs his tent. Another disappears. His tongue is nailed to a temple door. A lesser-known unsettling truth. You secretly reinstated the old punishment of slow slicing lynching for betrayal. Publicly abolished decades earlier, it returns in whispers. They say a man screamed for 4 days in a bamboo cage. His last word was your name. You do not deny it, but you do not confirm it either. Silence becomes your sharpest decree. You give speeches now, not many, not long, just enough to remind them that you remember everything, that you still sleep on straw, that you still wear the robes of the monk you buried, even when you wear silk, especially then, because image is everything. A boy approaches your tent one night, 13 maybe, covered in bruises. He kneels, doesn't speak. You wait. Finally, he pulls a rusted coin from his sleeve. The emperor's face cracked, smirking, meaningless. The boy says, "I thought you should have it." You ask him why. He shrugs. "It was in my brother's mouth." You ask where his brother is. He points behind him, to a pile. He doesn't flinch. You take the coin. You keep it. For luck, you tell your guards. But in truth, you just need to remember what the empire tastes like. Copper, smoke, teeth. You make your move. You set siege to a city that once considered itself too sacred to fall. Nanjing. The gates don't open. They don't need to. Famine does your work for you. Inside the walls, officials argue over which god to sacrifice to. Outside, your men eat rats fried in lantern oil. Then, someone finds a sewer tunnel. Your spies crawl in first. Then the dogs. Then the fire. By morning, the gates are ash. You walk in wearing stolen robes from a UN governor you had strangled in his bath. The people bow. Some weep. Some laugh. One throws a stone. Your guards kill him instantly. You don't stop them. You want the rest to see what happens when hope outweighs fear. In the ruins of the governor's palace, you find a map carved into the wall. Every province, every grain store, every canal. You sit beneath it cross-legged and laugh. A quiet laugh, a cold one. Because now you know exactly what must die next. Not just the dynasty, but its memory, its symbols, its language. You begin changing the characters. A tiny alteration to the way heaven is written. A new brushstroke on the word for law. Soon, old books don't match the new. Old prayers misfire. The people must learn again in your tongue. You are not just killing the UN. You are rewriting gravity. And yet, at night alone, you wake choking. The coin burns in your palm. The boy is gone. But the sound of his footsteps remain just outside your tent. A moment of dread. You wonder if somehow he's still kneeling, waiting for your face to change, waiting to see the moment you become the thing you promised to destroy. And you realize he already has. The general who wasn't supposed to live. That's you now. You were born to rot in silence, barefoot in the mud, beside plague corpses and empty rice bowls. You were supposed to cough once too many times and die nameless. You were supposed to be forgotten. And yet you rise. The warlords watch your ascent with the unease of men staring at a noose, wondering if it fits them too. You win battles you shouldn't. Command loyalty you don't ask for. You fight with too much discipline for a beggar, too much cunning for a monk, and far too much success for someone who isn't noble. You weren't trained in strategy, but starvation teaches patience. Abandonment teaches anticipation. And monasteries teach silence. The Yuan generals, still fat on Mongol pride, underestimate you. Over and over. You let them. You pretend to hesitate. You stagger supply lines just enough to look weak. You retreat at the right angle, so they charge and drown. You learn quickly a retreat isn't failure. It's bait. A verified fact. In 1356, your army captures Nanjing, and you do not give it back. You make it your capital. Not as a throne, not yet, but as a message. This land listens to you now, not the great Khan. And the old nobility, they begin to panic. They can smell the smoke curling behind your victories. They whisper that your charisma is unnatural, that your survival is divine, that you are not a man at all, but something older, something pulled from the cracks in the empire's bones. They are right to fear you. You feed their paranoia like pigs at a trough. You begin to stage generosity. You offer clemency to rival generals, food to starving cities, protection to scholars. They kneel, they cheer, they send gifts. Then you crush them, one by one, with precision, with gratitude. You invite a commander named Chen Yuliang to your war council. He brings 5 sons. They sit beside you, eat your duck, praise your strategy. 2 weeks later, you drown them in the Yangtze, the same river you once drank from with blistered hands. A lesser-known truth, you keep a logbook, not of your enemies, but your allies. Every kindness, every hesitation, every blink too long. You study them more closely than your maps. You never forget a weakness. You learn to sniff ambition like blood in the water. No one rises unless you lift them. No one survives unless you blink. There's a pattern now, a shape to your method. It isn't cruelty, not exactly. Cruelty is loud, messy, indulgent. What you do is unnecessary. When you execute the old rebel leader who first taught you how to command, he weeps. You don't. You thank him. And then you burn the records of his service. History has no use for shadows. Your commanders learn this lesson, quietly. They stop bragging, stop building shrines, stop naming villages after themselves. Everything belongs to you, even their stories, even their victories. You are the center of the orbit now, the one fixed point in a sky of flickering stars. But sometimes you lie awake at night in the silence of your command tent, the wine untouched, the reports open, the flame low, and you feel something crawling across your chest, a weight, a breath. The boy again, no, something older, a whisper of an empire still alive, not in palaces, but in the mouths of the dead. You silence it by reading. You reread reports until they feel like scripture. You memorize supply counts like prayers. You recite the names of executed ministers like rosary beads. This is how you keep control. Not through armies, not through fear, but through remembering. You are memory now. You are record. You are law. Your spies inform you of a plot minor laughable. A group of minor nobles meeting in a tea house to discuss the limits of authority. You don't arrest them, you poison the tea. The smell of jasmine never leaves your nose afterward, even in battle. You start to associate sweetness with death, and death with order. You now hold a third of the empire. The Mongols, distracted, are bleeding elsewhere. The Yuan emperor sends emissaries to negotiate. You don't answer. You send back the emissaries, heads shaved, eyes stitched open, tongues removed, still breathing, just enough to deliver your silence. They call you the Monk Emperor, now not in reverence but in terror. You haven't taken the title yet, but everyone knows it's coming. Even your dreams begin to shift. You no longer dream of rice or disease or drowning monks. You dream of corridors, endless golden corridors filled with mirrors. Each mirror reflects not you, but a different face. Old, young, twisted, crowned dead Narhuns. Dead. And in the farthest mirror, something moves behind your reflection. You never look directly. You can't. A moment of dread. One night you wake and realize you don't remember your mother's voice. Not the pitch, not the accent, not even her name. You lie there, eyes open, heart still, and you realize you never intended to remember her. You've been deleting your past, quietly, efficiently, like a clerk crossing out a ledger. You tell yourself it's for the future. You tell yourself the empire needs clarity. You tell yourself a clean past makes for a better myth. But sometimes you hear someone weeping outside your chamber door, and no one's there. Not the boy, not the generals, not even the wind. Just something, remembering you too well. The rain returns, but it does not cleanse. It never does. You remember standing in it as a child, thin as smoke mouth, open like a baby bird begging the sky for mercy. You thought it was holy back then, the heavens weeping with you. You were wrong. Now it falls on the bodies of your enemies. Their blood swirls in gutters, their intestines catch on cartwheels. Their names are written in the mud by boot prints and hoof tracks. You ride through it all face dry beneath a lacquered hood. Your men part the crowd, and your horse does not step aside for the dead. Your emperor in all but name. You already sit on a throne, just one made of bayonets and bending knees. You already control the harvest, the salt, the silver. You already decide who eats and who starves. You just haven't said the words yet. But they're coming. The Mongol Yuan are not dead, not yet. They slouch further north, backs bent with gold and shame. But here in the lower river valleys, in the rice lands, in the cradle of the Han, they are gone. Their banners are torn, their garrisons slaughtered, their taxes unpaid. And when your men finally breach the imperial grain store in Suzhou, they find something worse than treasure. They find bones, a historically verified horror. The UN kept rice storages sealed while entire provinces starved, letting thousands perish, while imperial granaries overflowed with moldy sacks and human remains. You order them opened, not to feed the people, but to send a message. You display the bones, stack them in market squares, paint them red, call it history. They cheer for you louder, the more grotesque you become. You've learned something very important about peasants. Feed them, and they'll follow you. Starve them, and they'll fear you. But make them afraid of someone else, and they will worship you. You paint the Mongols as monsters, cowardly, alien, cruel. The truth, they were once no worse than you. But now you are worse than them. And they love you for it. You do not just fight soldiers anymore. You fight the very idea of UN. You erase it from coins, from monuments, from lullabies. One by one you take back cities, not by force but by famine. A lesser known truth, you cut supply lines to your own people. You strangle your own regions just to blame the Mongols for the hunger. They riot. You arrive. You bring food order banners. You become the savior of suffering you engineered. It's efficient. It's quiet. It's how power survives. You notice that no one laughs in your presence anymore. Even old friends, even the wives who once called you soft-hearted, even the children you raise like porcelain wrapped in silk and guarded by eunuchs who don't blink. You don't laugh either. There is something in your smile now, an architecture of menace. You see it in paintings, in statues. Artists have started giving you predator eyes. You approve the likenesses, every one. There are whispers that you no longer sleep in beds, that you sleep on the floor like a soldier dressed in armor sword at your side. They are true. You don't trust silk anymore. It moves too softly. It hides too easily. You once found a poison pin sewn into your robe, buried so deep it pricked your neck while you bowed to pray. It left a scar that never healed. You've kept the pin. It sits on your desk beside a cup of ink, and sometimes you forget which one is the poison. You build roads now, wide, straight, imperial. You say it's to connect cities. You know it's for marching armies. You commission fortresses, rest stops, shrines. You call it unity. The people call it destiny. But deep down under the fine red lacquer of empire, something else festers. The land is still dying. Locusts return. Floods rip through the plains. And the yellow river moves again, dragging villages into the sea like fingernails scraping a grave. Your astrologers say it's a sign. You agree. But not of your failure, of your divine necessity. You hold the chaos together now by sheer force of will. You don't ask for permission. You are permission. You order the execution of a governor for failing to build a dam in time. The man was blind in one eye and had lost his own child in the flood. You don't flinch. He had a responsibility. His body is nailed to the dam wall, an example. The waters recede. You take credit. A moment of ethical decay. You look into the eyes of a starving mother who begs for grain. She offers her son to you not for mercy, but for meat. You take neither. You leave both. The next day, her body is found beside the palace gate. She carved your name into her chest with a sharpened bone. Your ministers burn the corpse. You say nothing. You are told you should take the title now. Emperor, Son of Heaven, Founding Father. You hesitate not from doubt, but from calculation. It must be perfect. You will not ask for the mandate of heaven. You will replace it. So you stage it. You create a vision, an old monk blind and glowing with light, who appears in a village and speaks your name. You fund rumors of golden dragons circling your banners. You forge prophecies, burn the originals, rewrite divinity. When the people beg you to rule, you accept reluctantly. They cry, they kneel. You feel nothing, only the weight of inevitability. At night, you walk alone through your palace corridors. The stone is always cold, no matter how many braziers burn. You pass through your war trophies, your maps, your preserved banners, and you reach a room you never enter, the one where your old monk's robe still hangs, brown, threadbare, blood-stained. You leave it there, not out of sentiment, but as a warning to yourself of what you came from and what you can still become again. The night you decide to kill him, he is laughing. It's not a cruel laugh. That would be easier. It's the laugh of a man who taught you to read, to ride, to fight, not for victory, but for something holier. A man who believed in your light even when you were all shadow. His laughter once soothed you. Now it sounds like betrayal. He believes he still knows you. He doesn't. He thinks the world is still made of truth and loyalty and brotherhood. It isn't. It's made of hunger. And you're the only one who learned how to eat. He is called Zhu Yuanzhang, the last of your great mentors, a man whose beard once dragged through the bloodied dirt of battle beside yours. You shared rice under the same mosquito net. You broke siege walls shoulder to shoulder. He once took a spear meant for you, still walks with a limp from it, and you know that if he were in your place now, he would never have taken power. That's the problem. You can't have anyone near you who still thinks there are lines you won't cross. So you cross one more. He's summoned to a banquet. Wine over rice at calm. Candlelight. thick silks and quiet music. He toasts to your reign, your glory, your vision. You smile. You raise your cup. There's no poison in it. That would be cowardice. You've arranged something older, a death that history won't question. He leaves the banquet, drunk full, praising your name. On the road back to his estate, his cart tumbles off a cliff. Horses scream. Wood shatters. No one survives. So they say, but you know better, because you picked the soldiers yourself, the same ones he trained. It's what he would have wanted, you whisper. A historically verified horror, Zhu Yuanzhang, before officially declaring himself emperor, orchestrated the quiet deaths of former allies, mentors, generals, and rebel leaders who might one day challenge his legitimacy. Many disappeared without a trace. Some were murdered in staged accidents. Others were given false promotions and sent into ambushes. The loyalty that raised him became the first thing he buried. You tell yourself it's mercy. You tell yourself the empire needs clarity. But part of you remembers every joke he ever made. The time he split his last dumpling in half for you. The way he once sang lullabies to a wounded soldier who cried out for his mother. You wonder briefly if he felt anything when the ground vanished beneath him. The wine in your mouth tastes like dirt now. Another betrayal follows, then another. You find yourself surrounded by men you promoted but do not know. They flatter you with phrases you once spat in disgust, heaven chosen. Sage ruler, sage, dragon in human skin. You write laws against flattery. You arrest those who disobey. Then you arrest those who obey too well. Paranoia is efficient. It keeps your circle small. It makes the circle yours. Your court is a mosaic of suspicion. Ministers walk backward in your presence. Guards aren't allowed to look you in the eye. A noblewoman is executed because her poem might contain a pun about your nose. A disturbing lesser-known truth. Under your early reign, one court official is flayed alive for criticizing the feng shui of a palace building. His skin is nailed to the wall with a sign, so that others may learn. You learn something too. Fear is faster than loyalty, and it lasts longer. But your past won't leave you alone. Your old rebel brothers, those who once stole with you, wept with you, bled beside you, send letters. They call you brother still. They beg for recognition, land, security. You give them titles. Then you take them away. One by one. They stop writing. Some disappear. One is forced to kneel in front of his own village and confess crimes he never committed. Then he's beheaded. The crowd is paid to cheer. You visit that town a year later. A child runs up to you and hands you a flower, smiling. You ask her father what the flower means. He says, it blooms on graves. You don't smile. Not anymore. There's a new general at your side now. He's clever, efficient, and young enough to believe in the story you invented about yourself. You like him, so you promote him. Then, one evening, he asks a question. Do you ever miss who you used to be? And something behind your eyes cracks like dry parchment. You tell him the truth. That person is dead, buried beneath the empire, 1,000 feet down. But sometimes, yes, you hear him scratching at the coffin lid. You decree a national mourning day for the fallen rebels who fought for liberation. You don't mention their names. You've erased them from the records. You commission statues of yourself with scrolls in one hand and a sword in the other. The message is simple. I write the law. I enforce it. But deep in your palace, in a sealed room lined with red silk and caged birds who never sing, you keep their names carved on a wall. Just the names. No dates, no crimes, no context. You read them once a year, silently. No incense, no tears, just the cold recitation of ghosts. An ethical ambiguity takes root. You wonder if you should have left just one alive, to remember with, to laugh with, to tell the truth too. But you know what truth does. It unbuilds, and you're still building. The mandate of heaven is yours now, official, sealed, celebrated. You hold ceremonies, you receive tributes, you rename cities, you rename the stars. You ban the old Mongol calendar and install a new one that starts not with the birth of the world, but with you. The year of the beggar is over. It is the year of the founder. And all across the empire, children learn a different version of history. They memorize your poems. They chant your edicts. They draw your face with golden ink. They don't know your real name, only your chosen one. You look out across the capital from your tower of carved jade. You no longer see homes, just rooftops, just tax, just power. You thought it would feel like victory. It feels like silence. It feels like everything below you is made of bones. And somewhere in the back of your throat, laughter tries to rise. But it dies there, right where the prayers used to live. The sky above Nanjing turns yellow. It is not the color of dawn. It is not the reflection of the palace tiles. It is smoke. Someone somewhere is burning old books again. Not the wrong books, just the unnecessary ones. Histories written by other hands. Truths carved with the wrong chisel. Memories that contradict the shape of your throne. They say it's for unity, standardization, peace. They do not say it's because you can't afford to let the past speak. You listen anyway, because even under layers of silence, history has a voice, and it is not kind. The ministers lie to you now, not because they want to deceive you, but because they are afraid not to. They present fake reports of harmony, perfect harvests, obedient provinces. You thank them. Then you send spies to confirm every word. One returns missing his tongue, not because he lied, but because he told the truth, and it was ugly. You reward him anyway. A pension, a grave in a good district. You make it public. You want the court to understand truth is useful even when it bleeds. You have by now created the most elaborate intelligence network the country has ever seen. From tea house whisperers to eunuch scribes, from street beggars to imperial concubines, everyone listens. Everyone reports. Even the walls have ears. Literally, you have hollow chambers built into your own palace so that servants can monitor conversations undetected. Sometimes late at night you pass by and hear breathing, but you say nothing, because you're never sure if it's someone else listening or you. A historically verified chilling fact, Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang's spy apparatus, known as the Jinyue, began as a personal guard corps and evolved into a secret police force notorious for surveillance, torture, and executions. Their agents could arrest anyone, including high officials, without trial. It was one of the first modern authoritarian intelligence systems. They work efficiently. A scholar draws a map of your empire and accidentally places the capital slightly off-center. He's dismembered. A peasant tells a joke about your teeth. His village is fined 3 times its annual rice quota. A former general writes a memoir. The ink doesn't have time to dry. He dies during interrogation. The official report claims spontaneous combustion. You begin to issue decrees by the dozen obsessive minute laws. The size of bricks, the length of sleeves, the tone of mourning wails. You outlaw fortune-telling, then astrology, then weather prediction, then sneezing at the wrong time. It's not madness, it's not vanity, it's math. Control is cumulative, and unpredictability is treason, a disturbing lesser-known truth. During the early Ming dynasty, you established the household register system. Every citizen's family, occupation, and location was documented in government ledgers. Unauthorized movement was punished by death. You locked an entire civilization in place. You say it's to prevent rebellion. But you remember what rebellion felt like. Freedom tastes like mud and stolen bread. You can't allow that taste to return. Your face becomes harder now. You stop painting your beard black. You let it go white. Your eyes begin to sink. They say the emperor grows more divine by the year. You feel more like a monument than a man. And your dreams, they return. The fevered ones. The river that swallowed your parents. The lice. The temple bell that never rang. You see your brothers in rags holding bowls. Only this time, they're not begging for food. They're begging for forgiveness. You wake in a sweat that smells like iron. You order the incense changed. You change it again the next night. Nothing helps. You begin to fear your own sleep, so you start walking the palace at night, alone, past gold leaf dragons and oil lamps that flicker without wind. One night, you find a boy asleep in the corridor, a kitchen runner, 12 maybe. He must have collapsed delivering soup. You nudge him awake. He looks up and smiles. He doesn't recognize you. No fear, no bow. Just a sleepy child in the presence of a ghost. You ask his name. He tells you. You nod. You tell him to go back to sleep. Then you walk past. You don't have him executed. You don't have him promoted. You just keep walking. You remember his name for the rest of your life. An ethical ambiguity sharpens. For a moment you wonder if the world had treated you like that once. Just once. Would you have become this? But you were born in blood, not silk. You were made for the dirt. And now you're made of stone. Your empire is functioning. Trade pulses along silk roads. Rice fills the granaries. Pirates dare not approach. The Mongols are scattered. The taxes, though brutal, are predictable. The law, though cruel, is consistent. You are, by all measurements, a success. The people don't love you, but they fear you, which, as you now know, is the same thing, only quieter. There are uprisings. Of course, some monks in the West claim the Buddha is angry with your reign. You burn the monastery and execute the statues. A noble in the north refuses to pay tax. You erase his family name from every record. A prince from your own bloodline plots behind closed doors. You send him a gift, a mirror and a dagger. He gets the message. He sends a letter the next day. In it, he thanks you for your wisdom and his new clarity. He is dead by the week's end. You call it peace. The historians of later centuries will call it something else. Some will say you were paranoid. Others will say you were brilliant. Some will say you went mad. But they will all agree on one thing: you survived. You built something from rot and bone and made it last. And at night, when the palace is so quiet, you can hear your own hair grow. You speak aloud the name you were born with. Zhu Yuanzhang. And it sounds like a lie, because there are no beggars in the Forbidden City. Not anymore. Only emperors and ghosts. They dress you in gold so heavy it bruises your collarbones. They tell you the dragon robe is sacred, that it was stitched by virgins under moonlight, dyed with saffron so rare it could buy a province. You nod, but you notice the seams still itch. Your skin rejects royalty. It remembers ash and sweat lice and salt. It remembers the sackcloth of the plague years. Nothing about silk feels real. The throne is made of sandalwood, smooth as bone. They carved it to resemble clouds, dragons, and immortality. But when you sit on it, it creaks. You are never quite sure if it's the wood or your spine. They call you the Son of Heaven now, but you still flinch at sudden sounds, especially laughter, because laughter was the sound people made when you begged for millet and tripped over your own feet. It was the sound before a beating, before a no, before a spit. And now, they still laugh, but only after you laugh first. You wonder if they find your jokes funny or terrifying. You do not ask, you do not care. You simply note who hesitates, and you write their names down. A historically verified chilling fact, Zhu Yuanzhang, once enthroned as the Hongwu emperor, personally wrote a manual for civil officials that included strict moral codes, instructions for behavior, and death penalties for nearly any deviation. One infraction using corrupt measurements in grain taxes. Punishment dismemberment. Your laws are detailed. Your punishments poetic. You don't kill everyone. Sometimes you merely blind them, or shave their heads and send them to work the fields they once taxed. Sometimes you burn their books but leave their tongues, and other times you leave their books and remove their hands. Balance. Your court is a display of lacquered elegance and utter dread. They call it the Ming Restoration, the rebirth of native rule, the end of foreign yoke, the flowering of order. But in private, they call it something else. The silk cage. They are not wrong. You control everything, not because you trust no one, but because you remember what happened when you did. Your early generals, those few who stood beside you in the smoke and ash, are now shadows. Some retired with estates and silence. Some were offered poison tea. Some, like General Lan Yu, tried to outshine you. You recall the banquet clearly. The meat was seasoned too sweetly. The music played too loud. You watched him raise his cup, and as he laughed at your jest, you saw it in his eyes doubt. He died weeks later, convicted of conspiracy. 15,000 people were implicated in his fall. 15,000. A disturbing lesser-known truth: during one of the largest purges under your reign, entire clans were executed based on a single official's supposed treason. Wives, children, distant cousins. The executioners ran out of space and used public roads as gallows. The lesson was clear. You do not merely remove threats. You salt the earth where they stood. And yet, paranoia grows like mold in a sealed tomb. You find yourself studying the faces of your eunuchs, the folds at the corners of their mouths, the slight delay before a bow. You adjust your inner circle constantly. None stay too long. None know too much. You no longer speak casually. Every word is weighed, not out of wisdom, but because of consequence. Even when you whisper, it echoes through 100 scrolls by dusk. You can no longer have an unrecorded thought. But sometimes, when the moon is low and the lamps cast too long shadows, you do what emperors are never supposed to do. You remember. You remember the boy you once were, your ribs counting the days, your belly full of breath and nothing else. The monastery bells that rang for death, not salvation. The rebel's torch that sputtered in your hands, your first sword gripped like a lie. And then you look at your reflection. A man, a sovereign, a god in gold. You do not recognize him. Not fully. That's when the rats return. Not literal rats, though the kitchens are inspected nightly. No, these are the ones in your dreams. They gnaw at the beams of your mind. They chew through your memories. They feast on the rot beneath the crown. An ethical ambiguity sharpens again. One night, a young official confesses. He lost the imperial seal during a stormy crossing. It fell into the river. You are enraged, but you do not kill him. You simply ask him to retrieve it. He dives. They say the current is strong that day. They say no body was ever found. You issue a new seal the following week, and make no mention of the previous one. After all, you are the emperor. It is not the seal that makes you sovereign. It is the fear in their bones. They carve your name into stone tablets. They chant it before meals. They print it on every copper coin. Your name is no longer a name. It is a system, a surveillance state wrapped in dragon silk, a whisper that lives in every wall. Still not everyone kneels. You hear rumors of laughter in the countryside, satirical poems scrawled in latrines, cartoons etched in barn doors, a play in the hills where a masked fool imitates your limp, your stare, your infamous bad teeth. You laugh when you hear it. A small, sharp laugh. And then, just to be sure, you send 10 riders in that direction, just to talk. Nothing excessive. The village no longer exists by the month's end. You tell yourself it's just a rumor, exaggerated. You didn't order that, not exactly. But you don't correct it either. You watch the snow. Snow doesn't hide blood. It only slows the smell. You sit beneath a canopy of red silk watching the flakes settle on the stone. The palace is silent. No birds, no courtiers, just the crunch of boots behind doors that never open again. You've started to notice how quiet power becomes once it matures. Not like in the days of fire and shouting where cities were taken with war drums and streets drowned in smoke. No, now when you want someone dead, you whisper. And by morning, they no longer exist. You've removed more men from history than you ever did from battlefields. A historically verified chilling fact in his later years, Zhu Yuanzhang launched sweeping purges that executed tens of thousands of government officials, scholars and nobles. The Hu Weiyong case alone, sparked by alleged treason, resulted in the deaths of over 30,000 people. Hu Weiyong had served you faithfully, brilliant, organized, indispensable. He made the government function. That was the problem. He was too essential, too efficient, too respected. You accused him of plotting a coup. You accused him of treason, sorcery, espionage, anything you needed. His head hit the courtyard stone at dawn. His family was gone before dusk. Then came his assistants, then their friends, then anyone who had spoken to them in the last decade. You didn't stop at punishment. You institutionalized annihilation. You issue an edict if one man commits treason. His entire clan, 9 generations, is to be executed. Male, female, child, elder, even the unborn. This is not vengeance. This is design. You are building something permanent. Every purge is a renovation. Every massacre a foundation stone. And so you simplify the court. You abolish the prime minister position, entirely too much power in one seat. You fragment authority, assign overlapping responsibilities, and turn departments into rival fiefdoms. They fight each other, which means none of them fight you. A disturbing, lesser-known truth. One official once tried to resign out of exhaustion. You personally accused him of cowardice and conspiracy. He was flayed alive and displayed outside the capital. His tongue was nailed to his chest. You no longer need spies. They come to you. They crawl into the palace eager to denounce their neighbors. Each whisper is a knife. Every nod a noose. They think they are protecting themselves, but you record every name they give and every name they don't. You've developed a taste for silence, for loyalty, for the look in a man's eyes just before he lies and realizes you already know. You smile when it happens. They say your teeth look sharper now, even when you're not smiling. And yet sometimes a ghost stirs, a flicker of the man who once wept over a bowl of stolen porridge, a memory of the monk's cold hand, the sound of fire devouring a village while you hid beneath a dead mule. The empire was supposed to fix that. The throne was supposed to be the cure, but you still hear crying at night. It comes from beneath the floorboards. You've had them torn up twice. Nothing there but dust and rats. But the sound continues. You tell yourself it's nothing. Just the wind. Just old dreams. You tell yourself this even as you order a new wall to be built 10 feet higher than the last. You add guards, then guards for the guards. The palace grows like a tumor. Gilded, impenetrable, rotting from the inside. An ethical ambiguity settles into your bones like winter frost one morning. A boy is brought before you, 12 years old. His father spoke out against the palace purges, was beheaded for sedition. The boy was caught painting birds on a courtyard wall. He's trembling. The ministers want to flay him. We must maintain order, they say. You study him. He reminds you of yourself. So you pardon him, but you exile him to a coal mine. You tell yourself it's mercy. You sleep that night. But the next morning, you order the wall scrubbed clean anyway. It takes blood to keep stone white. You hold audiences less frequently now. You prefer to watch them through veils behind screens. It's easier to see lies that way. Easier to ignore the smell of fear. You no longer eat in public. The last time you did a bowl of lotus soup made your lips go numb. It was probably nothing. Still, the cook was boiled. Just in case. Some say the emperor has grown paranoid. They whisper that the man who unified China now fears his own servants. You don't disagree. You simply reassign those who whisper. To the frontiers, to the mines, to the wolves. One sends you a letter 3 months later. It's mostly smudged ink and frostbite stains. You don't read it, but you keep it in your sleeve. You like the weight. You remind yourself that empires aren't ruled by love. They're ruled by certainty. And your certainty is absolute. A dragon must not blink, must not weep, must not forgive. But sometimes when your attendants are gone and the snow falls just right, you remember the street where your parents starved. You remember your brothers coughing blood into rags. You remember the monks' empty eyes, and you say their names softly, only once. Then you order another wall built, higher, thicker. You are not lonely. You are surrounded by ghosts, but none dare speak. You tell yourself this is peace. You say it again, out loud, and the silence agrees with you. You no longer sleep without guards. You no longer trust the guards. The air in the palace grows thick, not with incense, but with anticipation, the kind that follows lightning or precedes a knife. You dream in flickers now, not in stories, just colors, red mostly, the red of banners, the red of robes, the red of a boy's blood soaking into winter soil. Sometimes there's a voice, not a loud one, just enough to whisper, you remember, don't you? But you don't. You don't want to. Even now you walk the corridors like a soldier, slowly, silently, hand always hovering near the silk-wrapped hilt of your dagger. The walls are covered in murals of victory, celestial dragons and heavenly mandate. But they do not blink. They do not breathe. Unlike you, they are perfect. Even emperors rot. A historically verified chilling fact, Zhu Yuanzhang, in his final years, grew increasingly paranoid. He conducted frequent secret inspections in disguise, testing loyalty by appearing suddenly in remote provinces. Some local officials failed to recognize him. None of them lived. You still disguise yourself, not out of curiosity, out of fear. You ride out in the dead of night, wearing rags, your guards pretending to be beggars or farmers. You speak to peasants in the street. You pretend to be one again. But your voice no longer matches your face. They call you uncle. They do not meet your eyes. One old woman offers you stale bread. You take it, and you tremble when she turns her back. She doesn't know you, but she should. And that's what terrifies you. A disturbing, lesser-known truth. Toward the end, you ordered the construction of ghost walls, solid barriers deep inside the Forbidden City, with no doorways or purpose. Some say you believed ghosts were moving through the palace unchecked. Others say the walls were meant to confuse assassins, but those who built them never returned. You visit one such wall at dawn. It's damp. It weeps in the humidity. You press your hand to it, and it's colder than stone should be. Sometimes you swear you hear breathing on the other side. You order more walls built even deeper. You sleep better for a week. Then the dreams return. You see the monk again. His mouth opens, but it's not prayer he speaks. It's names. Names you erased. Names you burned. Names that shouldn't echo but do. Your physician tells you it's the pressure of rule. A natural weight. He offers powders to help you sleep. You accept them. Then have him poisoned just in case. You can't be sure of anyone now. Even your sons. Especially your sons. You rotate their tutors every month. You assign spies to watch their every movement. You tell yourself it's protection. But you know better. You're not protecting them from the world. You're protecting the world from them. They're too much like you. One of them drew a picture last week. It was of a mountain of corpses, each with your face. When asked why, he smiled and said, "That's where I plant the new empire." You had his drawing hand broken. You made sure he watched. And yet, you kept the drawing. You find yourself staring at it sometimes in the dark when the palace creaks and moans under its own weight. The image is crude, childish. But the mountain, it's accurate. You count the bodies. You stop at 1,000. You wonder how many more you've forgotten. You begin to hear voices in the mirrors. Not words, just a vibration, a resonance behind your reflection. Your ministers bring in priests, geomancers, sorcerers. One tells you it's the souls of the unjustly killed, and you laugh. And then without expression, you order his tongue removed. The laughter doesn't stop. You don't know if it's still yours. Ethical ambiguity becomes routine now. Last week, a flood destroyed a village. The peasants begged for aid. One of your ministers offered grain without your approval. He thought it merciful, so you had him tied to a millstone and drowned in the floodwaters. You send the body back to the village as a lesson. Mercy has a price. The village starved anyway. You sleep less. You eat alone. You drink from only sealed cups. Your robes are stitched with prayer symbols. You carry talismans. You consult astrologers before every meeting. But still you dream of the rats. They come in swarms, crawling from your mouth, from your sleeves, from between your ribs. You wake clawing at your own skin. Your servants are used to the screaming now. So are you. There are rumors that you've stopped aging, that your beard remains black, your posture perfect. They say the mandate of heaven has made you immortal. But you see your reflection. You know the truth. Even gods decay. You begin ordering executions by a gesture alone. A twitch of a finger, a turn of the wrist. It becomes a game. How subtle can the signal be before they die? Your attendants grow quieter, more precise. One smiles too brightly and is never seen again. Another blinks too slowly. Gone. You find comfort in control, in patterns. You arrange your scrolls by size, your shoes, by color, your memories, by threat. But not all things can be filed away. Not the dreams, not the monk, not the boy, not the woman with the bread who should have recognized you but didn't. They're all there, watching, waiting. Sometimes you wonder what they want, but you never ask. You're afraid of the answer. Instead, you build another wall, this one with no corners, just a circle. No ghosts in circles, the priest had once said. You had him buried under it just to be sure. And now even your heart beats like a drum behind stone, behind silence, behind walls so thick even your name echoes back in another voice. You lean against them now just to feel something. The chill, the stillness, the weight of empire pressing down until you're not sure if you're ruling it or buried alive beneath it. The final morning is quiet, not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a room holding its breath. Your servants avoid your eyes. They walk slower. Their shoes don't click on the polished tiles anymore. Someone has scattered salt in the hallways again. You said no more superstitions, but fear ignores orders. Your bones hurt today. The pain is not sharp. It is deep, like a hand wrapping around your spine. You felt it before during the famine years, when you couldn't tell if you were starving or simply becoming hollow. Now you're full of everything, and still you feel empty. Your son kneels before you trembling. He's brought a gift, a porcelain tiger. His hands are small and shaking. You nod, say nothing, watch him place it carefully on the floor. It shatters, not because he dropped it, because the floor beneath it cracked. A fault in the stone, or in the future. You rise slowly and feel your crown shift slightly on your scalp. You tighten the band. The gold feels cold, heavier today, as though it knows. You step out into the courtyard alone. The peach trees are blooming too early, out of season, like an omen. You remember what it was to beg beneath those trees, a boy with no name, no shoes, no God. And now the gods obey you. That's the lie, isn't it? You built temples, burned scrolls, rewrote the stars themselves, but you never convinced them. You just made them quieter. The gods are waiting. A historically verified chilling fact, Zhu Yuanzhang, in his final days, demanded that his descendants follow strict funerary rituals, including burying his concubines alive to serve him in death. It was done. You ordered that too. You remember their faces. They smiled at you, not out of love, but because they were told to. You had promised they would follow you into paradise, but there is no paradise, just a box and dirt and silence. You have one final edict to sign. It's simple, the execution of a mid-ranking official who paused before kneeling. A moment's hesitation, enough to question his loyalty. You sign without blinking, but your hand trembles. The ink smears. You hand it back anyway. It's done, and with it so are you. You've begun to see your dead again, not in dreams, in corners, in doorways, behind screens, watching. Some whisper, some don't need to. One nods. It's the monk. He doesn't blink. You speak to no one of this. They already think you've gone mad. They say emperors shouldn't speak to shadows. They forget emperors are shadows. A disturbing lesser-known truth toward the end of his life, Zhu Yuanzhang began constructing his own mausoleum, the Ming Shaoling. He insisted it be grand but hidden, lavish but locked. It was sealed so completely that some of his most trusted architects vanished shortly after its completion. No one alive knew every secret, except you. You visit the site in disguise. You feel the earth tremble above the sealed tomb. There is no door, no way in or out. You smile. You've built the perfect empire, perfect in cruelty, perfect in fear, perfect in the way dead things are perfect because they never change again. And you know what must come next. You summon the boy, the son who still fears you most. He is not the eldest, not the strongest, but he flinches when you breathe, and that is enough. You make him kneel. You place your hand on his head. He weeps. You don't, because he will carry your name, and one day he will curse it. You'll be dead by then, if you're lucky, and if not, well, you've built enough walls. You walk back to your chamber alone. No servants follow. They know. There's a cup waiting, and a letter beside it. You've written it a dozen times, burned every draft. This one is short. You don't sign it, because emperors don't apologize. Not to gods, not to ghosts, not even to themselves. A final moment of dread. You lift the cup. It's heavier than you expected. Inside, the liquid is dark. Not quite wine, not quite poison. You drink, and for a moment, a blink, the room is silent. Then a scream. Not yours. One of the servants. They found the cup. Too late. You fall to your knees. The floor feels warm. You smile. And then nothing. The empire does not fall that night. It waits, like a lung full of ash. Your tomb is sealed. No one dare speak your true name. The histories call you merciful, strong, a peasant who became divine. But the walls remember. The drowned remember. The boy with the broken hand remembers. In time, your dynasty will wither. Your descendants will claw at one another like dogs in a pit. One will light the palaces on fire. Another will be strangled in his sleep. Eventually, the barbarians will come. They always do. Empires do not last. Only stories do. And your story is carved not in stone, but in silence. In the faces of the starving, in the gaps where names should be, in the unfinished murals where your enemies' eyes were scraped out. There's a lesson here, but you buried it too deep, under palaces, under bodies, under the weight of your own crown. And now, midnight listener, you feel that chill. That's not the air. That's history breathing on your neck. You thought you were safe, didn't you?